and welcome to another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. I'm Joanne LaFlamme.
I'm Chris Costa.
So Chris, what would you like to discuss today?
Well, last couple of weeks we've gone over some processes, how to set up. Last week we finished with plate making. Maybe we can start with press today.
Sure. And to start with press, what we should start with is really setting up a make-ready process and a wash-up process, because those are the first couple things you'll do before you get into the press. So we can take a look at that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Maybe we can start with a make-ready process?
Sure. Let's take a look at that.
Sure.
So I'm going to go into File Maintenance. And I'm going to go into my cost center. And we'll go into press. So you'll be setting up the make-ready and the wash-up in the same area as the press. So we'll focus on the Quick Master cost center I have set up for my Quick Master press. And you'll see with that cost center highlighted, I have three processes down here. I have a make-ready process, I have a run process, and I have a wash-up process. Now when you set up these processes, particularly when you set up the run process, you'll be able to select a make-ready process, that is the default. You'll be able to select a wash-up process, that is the default. So I usually build those two first, and then when we get into the press process, we'll be able to select them.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look. So I'm going to open up my make-ready process here, and we'll go over these fields. So you have basically your process code, whatever you want to call and put in the description. Typically we'll put something like MR or make-ready and the press name. Just like with any process in Enterprise, you can assign a helper code and a default number of helpers, and that would be if the particular process could require helpers. You can set up the particular code that's going to be used, and then if there's a default helper that you want by default to come in, you can set that up.
Sure.
You have your all-inclusive rate, and typically that would be the same rate for all of your press processes, because the rate of the machine is the same no matter what you're doing on it. So in my case, I set that at $100. And that's an all-inclusive, fully burdened rate. You also have a direct manufacturing rate, as you do in every process, where that would be the out-of-pocket expenses, so that would not include your overhead. We do have a WIP rate field that you can use. It's not calculated or used in any calculations in Enterprise, but it is calculated behind the scenes and in the tables if you wanted to use it for custom reporting. And then we get into the fields here that will define how this process is calculated. This first field, minutes for setup in the first plate, what that will be is how many minutes it takes for you to make ready the press, including the first plate. So it'll be any setup and make ready for that first plate. Then we have a minutes for any additional plate. So in my case, I have them set the same, but you could have them different. I might have, you could set it up, maybe the first plate and setup takes 15 minutes. Every additional plate maybe only takes 10. You also have the ability to put in minutes for a work and turn. So if there's additional setup time for a work and turn in position, you can add that here. Next you can add, so this will calculate the time for make ready. You'll also have make ready spoilage. So this will be the number of sheets of make ready spoilage that you can enter. Now both the spoilage and the time will get multiplied by the number of plates if you have that option checked, and most people do in system settings. If you remember way long ago when we did system settings, there was an option that said multiply make ready spoilage by number of inks.
Okay. Right.
So this number will get multiplied by the number of inks. This number in your press setup spoilage will not. This is just to set up the press. So if you do want maybe to multiply the time but not the sheets, you can put that in as the press spoilage, and that will be a flat number and not get multiplied by anything. Also, as with any process, you can mark it up separately. If you want to not mark it up at all, you would check that off and put in 0%, or you could put in a percentage here that you want to mark it up. If you leave it unchecked, it will use whatever the default labor markup is in your job. You can add make ready time if it exceeds 1 day. So if in the cost center itself, you'll put in a capacity. There's a field for capacity. If you set that field to say 12 hours and you've got a press run that's going to take 14, it's going to need more than 1 day. So you can have it add additional make ready time if it needs to go over another day. And then you have some of the basic quantity is mandatory on job costing entries. If you want to force the user to enter how many make readies they did in data collections, you would check that off. They will not be able to make a data collection entry without entering that. You also have a choice here. If you, rather than multiply the make ready by the number of plates, you want to multiply it by the number of signatures in the job. that's an option, and it's an option on each individual make-ready process. So that way, if you've got a 4x4 job, it's going to require 8 plates. It'll, if it's, say it's 2 signatures, 4x4, that would be 16 plates. So it would get multiplied by 16. If you check that off, it's only going to get multiplied by 2 because it's only 2 signatures.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how you set up the process and how that's going to calculate. And then the last option we have on every process where you can warn if it's skipped in data collections. And we have 10 user-defined fields. If there's a field you want to calculate, we don't have a field you want to track, and we don't have a field for it.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Can I have more than one make-ready code per press, or?
Sure, absolutely. You might have a standard make-ready, and you might have a difficult make-ready.
Okay.
So let's do that. Say this is my standard make-ready, but now if I just change this process code to something else, let me check my numbers here. I don't have a 5, so let me put a 5 in there. I'll change it to 3005. It'll actually create a new one. And maybe I want to call this difficult. And I can up this a little bit. Maybe I will make the setup to 25 minutes, additional plates 15, and maybe this is going to be 125 sheets of spoilage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to click OK. And now I've got another make-ready process. Now, in a run process, as I mentioned earlier, you can attach your make-ready code here. So I have my 3001 make-ready code here is the default. So let me exit out of here, and we'll go into a job. I've actually got one right here. We'll edit that job, edit the component, and we'll go over to the processes where I have my press process. And when I selected this process, it brought in the standard make-ready code. But if I know that this job is going to be difficult, I can select my more difficult make-ready code, and then the system will use that code.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Maybe we can look at a Washup process, how to create one of those.
Sure. Let's go take a look at that. So I'm going to cancel out of estimating order entry, and we'll go back into standards and take a look at the Washup process. Again, that's done under press. So here I have my Washup process. I'll modify that. Again, you have your process code description. Again, you can assign a helper. You have your all-inclusive rate, your direct manufacturing and whip rate, and then you just have a minutes per Washup field. And what this will do, if you, in an ink, you can, in any particular ink, you can assign however many washups you want to charge to a job for that particular ink. And then that will just simply get multiplied by that number of minutes and charged by your all-inclusive rate.
Okay.
Okay?
Sure.
So I have a minutes per washup, and then you have a couple other options. Again, you can mark it up separately. You can add washups if it goes over extra days. You can force a quantity, and you can warn just like you can in any process. And you have your user-defined fields. Okay. And again, when I'm in the run process, I can select the default washup. So that will automatically come in when I select the process. Those defaults will come in.
Okay, so that one looks pretty straightforward then,
Yep.
yeah.
And
you can have multiple there too if you want multiple Washup codes.
Absolutely, yeah. If you've got an ink that's a more difficult washup and you want to use a different code, you can do that.
Right.
Or a lot of times what people will do is just, if it's, they can increase the number of washups on the ink. Let's take a quick look at that.
Okay.
I'm going to go into an ink material. I'll go into my 4-color process ink. And then here you have a number of washups. I have mine at 0. A lot of people don't charge for 4-color washup if it's on the press all day and just multiple jobs run through it. But you could, if you wanted to spread that cost out across the jobs for the day, you might charge 1 washup or 2 washups.
Yep.
So you have that ability to put it in there. And then when you select the ink in a job, you can change that number as well.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Do you have any questions on those?
No, I think that was good.
All right. Well, next week we'll take a look at press process.
Actually setting up the press,
The run.
okay.
All right. Well,
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. I'm Joanne LaFlamme.
I'm Chris Costa.
Please look forward for more to come.